Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of Reverts Reality. My name is Nahela Morales, and I'm here with my co host, Sister Arenda Daka. Today we are on episode 93. Again, only seven episodes shy away from 100. So, once again, thank you for being so committed and staying around this long. Inshallah, we have, like we mentioned last week, we have a lot of new plans for not only the 100 episode, but after our 100 episode. Anyway, today we have a very important topic with a very special guest who is a very familiar face to Embrace, Alhamdulillah, and one of co-founders, fellow co-founders of Embrace, Brother Kenneth Mazzarella, is here today. And we will be talking about fasting with non-Muslim family. And before we came on, we were just kind of counting the years, and he mentioned it's been 10 years. So we're going to talk about all of that. And towards the end of today's shorter episode, we're going to shorten it today a little bit. We are going to give you some tips because even though we're all excited, we know firsthand that oftentimes our family members do not comprehend, do not understand. It does not resonate with the actual fasting of perhaps the Catholicism. Like when my grandmother used to fast, it was not a fast like ours. They would still drink, they would still sometimes eat. It was more of a sustaining from something. For example, during Lent, for those of you that come from Catholicism, we normally gave up stuff, right? So you would give up meat on Fridays and eat seafood instead. That's an example. Or if you were a smoker or whatever. So it's a complete different type of fast, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We are very excited for all of you who will be celebrating your first Ramadan. I know last night we had 3 at our halaqah, and so it's very exciting time for everyone. And I just want everybody to know that you have us here at Embrace as a support system. So do not hesitate to ever reach out. We are also having a lot of programming that will continue throughout Ramadan, and we will have in-person iftars throughout our different chapters. Everybody will manage them differently, but do look out for those flyers. So with all of that, let's get started, inshallah. So like we said, it's a very important time of the year. It's an anticipated month. We're all waiting for it. It's exciting. It's nerve-wracking for some. It causes anxiety for others. Am I going to fail? Am I going to do it right? There's so many questions that come up when you are about to fast, especially when it's your first time. But just add fasting with non-Muslim family to that. Now that's a complete different ballgame. And our champ here today, Brother Kenneth, has been doing it like a champ for so many years now. And so I want him to take us through perhaps the early stages and the middle, and how does his family members, specifically his mother, has she been very accommodating? Has it been something where it's been easier? Did it get easier through the years? Because I know a lot of our viewers will probably have those same exact questions. Does it get easy? Does my family will eventually understand? Will they fast with me? Will we be breaking fast together? Will we go eat together? And so on and so forth. So let me stop the chatting and let's get to Brother Kenneth's story with his non-Muslim family, and how has it been throughout these years, inshallah.
جزاكم الله خيرا. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. So to begin with, as you two know, and as hopefully many of our viewers here who have been with us before and have heard me speak before, I converted to Islam about 10 years ago. I'm not married yet, and I am currently living with my family. And so for each of these 10 years, I was with my mother. Inshallah, this year we've actually had my grandmother and my aunt moving with us, so I'll be experiencing Ramadan with actually 3 family members this year. But before this year, most of my Ramadan was spent with my mother. sometimes with other family members whenever I would go and travel to visit family during the month of Ramadan. And so throughout these past 10 years, I definitely had some very interesting experiences through fasting and my family witnessing my fasting. Some good, some bad. All I think very good lessons that I really would want to share with all of you. So first and foremost, explaining to your family why you fast. This is probably one of the most common questions that you'll get when you first convert to Islam is why do you fast? And one thing that I kind of did wrong was when I first explained why we fasted, I tried to explain it in more of a secular point of view. So, for example, I told my mother, we fast because, and you'll find many da'is and da'iyas, those who invite others to Islam and talk about Islam to non-Muslims. I told my mother, oh, we fast in order to understand and kind of put ourselves in the same shoes as those who are poor, those who are not able to have a meal every single day. And I was kind of explaining it more in that context. Even though we know that the primary reason why we fast is because this is what Allah has commanded of us. Allah says in the Quran that fasting is prescribed upon us as they've been prescribed to us before, is in order for us to attain this taqwa, this consciousness and closeness to God, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I tried to approach it the secular way first. And my mom's reaction was more of like confusion than anything else. It was like, okay, I mean, I kind of get that, but why do you need to? There wasn't really, she didn't really see much of a connection there. And so I would say first and foremost, when you're explaining to your family and your friends why you're fasting, we need to be upfront and just explain the first and foremost the reason why we do everything that we do. Because one of the biggest questions that we get is, hey, why we do what we do, what are the reasonings behind it, and we have to kind of first focus on the philosophy behind why we do what we do, why we follow Allah's commandments, explaining that relationship between us as the creation and the servants, and Allah as our creator and our master. When you explain it in that way, believe it or not, there's kind of a higher degree of respect and understanding from those who are listening. But during the first few years when I was fasting, my family, alhamdulillah, was very accommodating. They would always make sure whenever they would cook that they would leave food left over for me to have whenever it's time for me to eat. Alhamdulillah, my family has been very accommodating, making sure whenever they cook something, it's something that I am able to eat based off our dietary restrictions as Muslims. And so, alhamdulillah, when it came to breaking my fast and having food available for me, my family was very accommodating and supportive. Alhamdulillah. The challenges were number one, I was not able to eat with my family during dinner because I was not able to eat until like around 8:30, 8:45 during the summertime. And my family, my mother specifically, usually would eat around 6 or 7. She had a difficult time kind of eating later during the day. And so there was, for a whole month, we didn't really have dinner together. And at some point, my mother told me that while she respects, my religion, she hated Ramadan because Ramadan for her felt like that was the time that her son was taken away from her because I couldn't eat with her. And this I really want to emphasize for everybody, and I want everyone to kind of take this and learn from my mistake. Everyone here knows about the being hangry, right? When you're hungry and you're not getting food, you get kind of irritable. And we heard these stories about people during Ramadan, they would just sleep all day and just try and really minimize your activity in order to kind of accommodate your hunger. I fell into that trap. And so during those first few years, I would sleep late. I would be very low energy. I wasn't really doing what I needed to do around the house because it was just like, oh, I'm so hungry. I don't want to use like energy. And so at some point, I think my fourth year, my mother actually confronted me about this. And she said, like, look, I respect your religion. I respect your right to believe what you want to believe, but I hate Ramadan because during this time, I don't see you. You don't help out as much. I don't get to sit down and eat with you. It's just you're taken away from me. And it was a really big eye opener for me, right? Because even though it was unintentional, I ended up giving my mother a bad impression of Ramadan through my actions. While, of course, there may not have been much I could do in terms of, sitting down and eating with my mother for dinner because, it was just not the time to break our fast yet. I still could have been more cognizant of how I was acting. As we are supposed to be in Ramadan, we're supposed to have higher patience and be in better behavior during this month. I could have tried to be more active, and this is, I think, we'll go into making sure that you're having healthy meals during suhoor. Once you make sure that you're having a healthy meal during suhoor. Make sure you drink plenty of water during suhoor and during iftar. In between, it becomes easier to kind of hold yourself up and easier to kind of live your life based off your regular schedule. And so I started doing this during the last few years of Ramadan. I started being more cognizant of my attitude, making sure I was more patient. I made sure that whenever I had something for suhoor, it was something healthy. Whenever I had iftar, it was something not too filling, something light. And this actually did affect my mood in a positive way. I started being more cognizant of being more helpful around the house. And the next year, my mother told me, this year it hasn't been so bad. You're not sleeping all day. You're not so hangry. You're not being so irritable. You're being pretty normal, and it wasn't so bad. I also would try and sit down with my mother and my family when they were eating, even though I was not eating with them. I would try and every once in a while sit down and just kind of enjoy their company while they're eating. Now, of course, for some of us, that might be difficult, kind of sitting there watching people eat while you're kind of really hungry. All I can really say is, though, you kind of get used to it where it doesn't really bother you. I remember that there was one time when I was visiting family, everyone at the table was eating this delicious meal, and I was just kind of sitting there, twiddling my thumbs, watching everybody. It was difficult, but alhamdulillah, I was able to kind of power through. And after that, it kind of became easier for me to kind of sit down and eat with or sit down while my family eats, and so it becomes easier. So that's kind of some of the main points I want to first bring up. I don't want to kind of take the whole time here to talk, but just again to quickly summarize, being cognizant of your attitude, making sure that you get up for suhoor and have a healthy, filling meal, making sure that you're drinking between both during suhoor and during iftar regularly, and just trying your best to spend time with your family. Even when they're eating, you can still sit down and talk with them and spend that time with them. Make sure you do not give your family a bad impression of Ramadan, because we know that Ramadan is the most blessed time of the year.
Completely agree with you. And I wish Andrew was here because he actually experienced as a teenager Ramadan with his non-Muslim family. And it was the toughest. I mean, he was on the phone with me. He's like, Mom, they're eating all the time. They don't stop eating, Mom. And then out of courtesy, they would always ask him, do you want to eat? He's like, I didn't realize how much these people eat. And it was really, really hard by the time his trip ended. And he was there for the entire he was there for a week. So during Ramadan, he said, I will never, ever, ever go with my father, his non-Muslim side of the family, during Ramadan. It is so difficult. And he says he remembered going to Times Square. And so, the halal hot dogs, and you have all
Mm.
these halal options in Times Square. And so the good thing was that his dad's like, okay, we can take one for your dinner tonight. And he's like, yeah, but it doesn't taste the same. you know. But these are some things. I think something that you mentioned that, you know, I'm fortunate. I'm sure Arenda has a story or two about spending time with her family. I really don't have, I've tried to keep Ramadan a very sacred time where I either don't travel, or if I travel, I don't break my fast. Even if I travel, I remember when I went to Brazil, and subhanallah, we went for dawah. We went during the World Cup, and Ramadan started, I think, 3 or 4 days within before we left. And some people opted of not fasting, which that's an option when you're traveling, and that's just Allah makes it easy for us. But you have to make up those days. So I'm very, very strict when it comes to that. The least days that I have to make up, I do not play with that. So I chose to fast. And it was really, really hard because obviously you're in a different country, people are eating. It's different than when I spend 10 days during Ramadan in Morocco. Everything is shut down. Things start opening up at 6, 7 o'clock, close to iftar. So it makes it very easy. Now, I like what you said because I think a lot of us. So today's topic is fasting with your non-Muslim family. That's what we're talking about today. So alaikum, Sister Amina. And so, yeah. So one of the things you mentioned, and I think it's important for especially our new shahadas, new converts that will be fasting for the very first time, is something that Brother Hasib said at last night's halaqah, was to take it very easy, very slow, to be very patient with yourselves. It's not a marathon, right? So we need to make sure that you are very patient with yourself. But even as you're being patient and you're gaining this new, it's part of your new way of life, your new deen, your new religion, your new faith. You also want to make sure that you prepare. So last night we talked about the intention that goes prior. And so I remember another time I was traveling and I was in Mexico, and the sheikh told me, because he broke the fast during Ramadan, he's like, sister, Allah makes it very easy for us. Don't make it difficult for yourself. Everybody was eating. And so inshallah, I think that's something to be very mindful about when you are surrounded with your family. And it's very difficult for you, especially if it's your first fast. One of the things you do have to keep in mind is obviously that we make up these fasts at a later time. But Sister Arenda, you wanted to share a story because you did have that experience with your family.
Yeah, I mean, I was all the way across the United States when I became Muslim. So I wasn't really close with my family in terms of on a daily basis. So like Ramadan is a long month, and I didn't usually travel during Ramadan. But one such year happened to be in the summer month when I was traveling to see my parents. And I usually go there for a month. And that month I cut it short to 2 weeks just because it was Ramadan. I wanted to be back home for Eid to spend it with all of the family over there that was celebrating at the end of Ramadan. But when I went there, they lived in Montana at the time. And I just remember, God bless the people that live in places that have long days, because I would be sitting there waiting for the sun to go down at 11:45 p.m. And I'm like, okay, pretty soon, inshallah, I can eat. And that was probably maybe 5-6 years into, alhamdulillah, 27 years I have behind my belt since I embraced Islam. But, it was 5-6 years into my conversion. So that was really tough because I wasn't used to that. My family, alhamdulillah, was always very open to anything I did. And we weren't really a family that sat down and ate together. Usually when I go there, I feed everyone. I cook for everyone. So it kind of threw their schedule off more because I'm getting up early before the sun rises and making a breakfast. And then, late in the evening, they're pretty much in bed. So it was a different experience for me. And we'll find that across the board with so many converts. Everybody is going to have a different experience. We did have actually, and you might find this in some families where somebody wants to join you in the fast. They're curious. They want to know, what is it about, right? Why do you fast? And we did have one of my children's family friends stay with us last year during Ramadan, and they expressed interest. Excuse me. They expressed interest in what we were doing and why we weren't drinking or eating all day long. Typically, they would assume we can drink water, but we don't drink anything from the time, before our morning prayer until the sun goes down. And they wanted to experience it with us. So they did it for a few days. Probably about 3 days. The first day was the hardest, but it made them recognize it kind of slows your day down. It kind of takes away all of that focus because we don't realize how much we're going to the cabinet. We don't realize how much we're going to the kitchen and grabbing something. It's like a culture here, like Andrew's experience. Oh my gosh, they eat so much. I didn't realize how much they eat. We don't really realize how much we're snacking through the day until you can't. And then you're constantly catching yourself. Well, what does that do? That there's a purpose, right? It redirects our thought process and it helps us be more aware and it kind of trains our willpower, right? And taking away all those distractions brings us closer to the one that created us and creates that bond. So I haven't had as much of a challenge as Brother Kenneth. God bless you. I think you're lucky though, because even though you aren't eating with them, they're preparing food and saving it for you, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Except for probably suhoor. That's a challenge. I'm sure they don't get up before the sun comes up to cook for you. So I'm curious to know, when you're with your non-Muslim family, when you're having to eat suhoor because you want to have something that's sustaining and you're hydrated and can get through the day, what do you do? What have you done? And have you kind of tweaked it over the years to where it's helped you? Like you said, at first you had the hangry issue, right? Now you've tweaked it over the years to where you've been able to sustain much better. So what do you do for all the brothers out there, or maybe some of the sisters? This is their first Ramadan and they're wondering what to do in the morning for suhoor.
Well, first and foremost, what I will say to the brothers out there who don't know how to cook, learn how to cook. If you know how to cook, you don't have to worry about, oh, my family's not going to be able to get up in the morning early to take care of me. If you just have some basic, cooking skills, making scrambled eggs is one of the easiest things. I remember I learned how to make scrambled eggs back when I was, I think, 8 or 10 years old. One of the easiest things to do is it doesn't take much effort. So that's the first thing. Just learn how to cook very basic meals. Try not to rely too much on eating out or eating microwavable foods because those aren't the healthiest of foods. Um, Second, there were kind of two strategies that I tried. Um, as you guys know, I'm not much of a morning person, and so it was difficult for me to get up extra early before Fajr in order to prepare something well. So what I used to do was I actually would prepare something the night before that I could just throw in the microwave and just microwave for a few seconds I whenever it's time for me to have suhoor. So that was my first strategy. Um, my second strategy is I would just be more have more discipline to get up early to make a nice breakfast beforehand because it's, as everyone here knows, when it's fresh off the stove, it tastes much better than having it than eating it from something from the night before. So I started to do that, and when it comes to how that would affect my family to make sure that I wasn't waking them up, I would just try my best to be as quiet as possible. And alhamdulillah, for the most part, I never really had an issue with waking up my mother while I was preparing suhoor. Now, sometimes she would kind of hear a little bit of clinking here and there, but her main indicator as to whether or not I would get up for suhoor is if there were dishes in the sink when she got up in the morning. And so for her, it became an indication on whether or not I was getting up for suhoor. And mashallah, she did a good job pestering me and making sure that I was getting up for suhoor. She was like, "Hey, I noticed there weren't any dishes in the sink this morning. Did you get up to eat?" Alhamdulillah, towards the end, it was just mainly I was cleaning up after myself. But for her, it became almost an indication whether or not I was actually eating beforehand and getting up for support because of course she was concerned for my well-being and wanted to make sure that I wasn't uh, starving and wasn't that I was staying hydrated. So for me, I mainly would just you know at the previous place that we lived at, the kitchen was a good deal away from her room, so I didn't have to worry too much about waking her up. But it's just really being cognizant of what you're doing, try not to make too much noise. Another strategy is getting out the tools that you're and the kitchen utensils you're going to need beforehand, maybe the night before, putting out the stove. I mean, putting out the pan, putting out whatever utensils that you need beforehand, so that way you're not in the morning clanking through the kitchen trying to pull out everything and making all this noise. If you pull out all the utensils that you need beforehand the night before, not only will it save you time, because the biggest thing for me was making sure I have time to cook and eat, but it also will minimize the amount of noise that you're making whenever you're preparing your suhoor, and you don't have to worry about waking up your family. Now, for those who don't know how to cook, in my case, my mother is like, may Allah guide her and may Allah bless her. She would always offer to make me breakfast. To For me to microwave the day before. So if you're mashallah tabarakallah, lucky enough and blessed enough to have a family that would be willing to do that for you, that's also a great strategy. I would always try and cook myself because I didn't want to again make Ramadan a burden upon my mother.
Beautiful. And I think the one thing I would say so we're kind of going into tips right now. You gave an awesome tip for everyone for suhoor, right? And we do have some tips to share with you if this is your first Ramadan. But one of the main tips, just listening to what you're saying, getting enough food and drink and making sure you're hydrated. I would say over my 25 years with myself, with watching my kids go through Ramadan, drinking enough liquid water in the morning is so key. And it is what will help you sustain your energy through the day. If you are not feeling, you'll go through some periods of maybe some headaches or exhaustion the first couple of days, but that hydration is key. So if you are really feeling sluggish and icky, it's likely because you're not getting enough liquid. Make sure you're keeping bottled water or a cup of water by your bedside at night, just drinking as much as you can in the evening. So I just want to throw that out before we kind of head into our tips there.
Yeah, and I'm gonna dive in the tips. Like we said, we're gonna make this this episode a bit shorter. I would say this is for the ladies. This is very important. A lot of times we don't know the fiqh of this or the ruling of it, but it's very important for you ladies. During the month, Allah gives us a week approximately of a break. And so during this break, which is your menses, your monthly menses, you do not fast. You are actually not allowed to fast. So you can actually feed your family and you still get blessings. You can still make a lot of dua. You don't fast or pray, but you can do other acts of worship, such as you can read the Quran off your phone. You can make a lot of dua. You can feed others. You can cook for others. You can do chores since you'll be able to eat. And also remember to count those days, whatever days is that you are not fasting, because those days you are, it's obligatory for you to make them up after Ramadan. So inshallah, that's tip number one. Don't fast because you do have a window, a vacation, a break from the Almighty, and it's mercy from Him. So don't take it as oh my gosh, it's really bad, or if it happens during the last 10 nights, or sometimes things happen a certain way, our bodies kind of change a little bit because of the lack of nourishment or what have you. But just take it as what it is. It's mercy from Allah, and there's other worship, other acts of ibadah that you can actually do, such as a lot of dhikr and helping others.
That's right. So we're going to go ahead and dive into those tips before we close out. It's like Sister Nahela said, we're going to make this a little shorter today, but we want to leave you with some important tips that can help you, inshallah, through this first Ramadan, if you are with your non-Muslim family. And so we're going to go ahead and share those and kind of all take turns giving you some of these tips. We have about 8 tips here that we wanted to share with you. One thing is make sure you're getting up 30 to 40 minutes before dawn. Okay. And you want to make sure you do that so that you have time to make something and drink enough liquid before your, the adhan sounds for the Fajr prayer, for the early morning prayer. It's better to make this meal heavier because this is what's going to sustain you for the day. All right. the evening meal should be a little bit lighter. And this is kind of, if you're in a group of Muslims who maybe celebrate from their culture, from other countries, it can kind of be opposite sometimes. So this is just a hint, or we've all come to learn, is the most beneficial. Try to drink 6 to 8 cups of water between sunset and dawn every day. That's why I recommended keeping that water next to you.
I would say tip number 2 would be try to minimize the noise, something that already Kenneth spoke about. So very brief, just try not to make too much noise for your non-Muslim family. Respect that time as well. So like Kenneth said, prepare the night before, leave all your utensils and everything that you're going to make before, and that way you make the least noise, so you respect your family members as well.
Yes.
And so our third tip would be to, during the day, try your best to stay out of the kitchen. Kind of like what Sister Nahela was telling us before, what her son went through. You don't really realize how often you go to the pantry just to look for something to snack on until Ramadan, and you find yourself going over there, opening up the fridge, opening up the pantry, and then you kind of catch yourself. So it's very important to try your best to stay out of the pantry during the day, especially if you have family members who have that same habit that I think most of us do have. So do your best to stay away from the pantry and try to occupy your time in a more productive manner, whether it's reading Quran, making dua, or reading something beneficial.
Absolutely. Also, there's a special supplication that we make when we actually break our fast. And this is the time when the supplications are most accepted. And so this is something we will be posting on our pages. So make sure that you're watching our feeds so that you can save those supplications, those du'as that we usually say at those special times during Ramadan.
Also, at sunset, I know that you are like ready to grub and you're ready to just stuff your face. Take it easy. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we drink water and take it in sips, right? So it's important for us not to gobble down a whole bottle of water and then you're not going to be able to eat. So take a bit of water, eat your iftar, break your fast with water, dates, whatever that is, or fruit. Then go pray. It's important for us to be, remember, Ramadan is about nourishing our spirit. It's about changing certain habits. So making sure that you are staying on top of your worship, your our fard, right? Obligatory worship. So, thank Allah for the day of fasting. Thank Allah for the opportunity, and so on and so forth. Make a lot of dua, and then you can go on and eat your meal. But remember, there is a hadith that the Prophet, peace be upon him, says 1/3 of water, 1/3 of air, and 1/3 of food. So you don't want to be like where you can't even bend over to pray or what have you. So just take it easy. And hopefully the meal, the morning meal, the suhoor will help you. And as the days progress, believe it or not, you get less and less and less hungry, so it gives you more clarity onto what you want to do throughout your Ramadan.
Yes.
And I guess our next tip would be if your family is preparing their dinner, don't be afraid to ask if they can leave something behind as a leftover. And for the most part, I'd say 9 times out of 10, your family would not only have no problem with it, they probably will offer them themselves if you want them to make extra. So don't be afraid to ask your family while they're cooking, as long as, of course, what they're cooking is halal, something that that's permissible for us to eat. Don't be afraid to ask if they could leave something, on the side for you, any as a leftover for you to have your iftar with, inshallah ta'ala. Now, again, we don't want Ramadan to be burdensome on our family. So if this is something that's going to be difficult for your family members to do for you, don't be afraid to cook yourself. It all, of course, depends on our own family dynamics. Like I said, alhamdulillah, I've been blessed with having a very loving family. So they had no problem doing these things for me. We all have our own dynamics, so just really it bases upon whether or not you feel doing so will cause an extra burden onto your family.
Yes, absolutely. And to add to that tip, I think Sister Nahela, are you going to be heading out here soon?
Yeah, I'll be heading out. So until next Thursday, I will leave you with both Brother Kenneth and Sister Renda, and they'll close us out. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
So adding on to that tip that you just mentioned, look for your local community, because a lot of the places this year are now opening up again for iftars. Like our community here, we're going to have 5 nights of the week that there will be an iftar available. So if you're at home and you're not able to eat the food with your family, or there's not leftovers, or you don't have family who's got food cooked for you that's halal, look in your community to find a local place that you can go for iftar and connect on there, inshallah. And the last, Sister Nahela did touch on one of the tips we had with the sisters regarding their menses. Make sure just keep track of the days you miss, because we do have to make those up at the end. And also physical activity. This is one thing my baby, who's 15 and way taller than me now, he is gotten into the gym now every day. He's at the gym every single day. And so he's so worried about Ramadan, like, how am I going to get my workout in? I'm not going to have any energy. So keeping our physical activity in this month a little bit to a minimum. So it's not going to be, going hard like we usually do, but you're going to be tired easier because you don't have that sustaining energy from the food and the drink throughout the day, but you can still get that in. A lot of people do it at different times, and you kind of just have to gauge what works best with you. So sometimes they recommend doing your exercise right before you break your fast for iftar. And you're going to be able to eat and drink right after. Some do it after the prayers. So it's just kind of play with it and see what works best for you. But this month, make sure take it a little bit easy on that side of things. And those are the tips we had prepared for you today. And there's, I'm sure, many more that we could add on there. But is there anything you would like to add, Brother Kenneth, that we haven't gone over yet for those who may be looking for some tips this year?
I would just again reemphasize. I think, alhamdulillah, we had a lot of really good tips and tricks that we all mentioned here today. But I again just really want to emphasize the importance of making sure that you do your best to make this Ramadan not just a good experience for you, but a good experience for your family as well. I really want to emphasize that take lessons from the mistakes that I made, where I was not being cognizant of how I was acting. I was not being cognizant of my habits. I was not being cognizant of how I was conducting myself during those first few years, to where I gave a bad impression of Ramadan to my mother. Just as we know, one of the biggest methods and most effective methods of giving da'wah, of inviting our friends and family to Islam, is through our character. And this is how the Prophet ﷺ and the companions primarily encourage those to convert to Islam, is through their character, through how they conducted themselves. It was their character and their manners as they were most impressed with. And so it's very important that we follow that sunnah, and that even when fasting can be very hard for a lot of us, especially when you're first starting in. You're doing something that you're not used to, and that's okay. And it's okay to take it slow and be patient. And if you really feel like it's going to be difficult for you, don't be afraid to tell your family, hey, look, I'm going to be fasting for the first time. Please forgive me if I come off a little short sometimes, or maybe like this. You just know this is something that I'm going to get used to, and this is only something that's going to be temporary, and eventually I'll get back to my normal self. This is just a learning curve. Don't be afraid to give your family a heads up if you feel you're going to be one of those people who have that hangry issue. You have you'll get hangry or something, or you'll find yourself getting sleepy and kind of sleeping more than you should. Don't be afraid to let your family know. Even ask for their support. Like, hey, can you make sure that I'm up at this hour? Can you help me during this time? Communicate with your family, I think, is like the most important key. Communicate, be on your best behavior, and try your best to be there for your family, even during these times where you feel like you don't want to do anything because you're fasting all day.
Very good advice there. And I would just like to say, just keep in mind also, it can be very daunting as your first few Ramadans come through, with all the challenges that you go through and all the new information you're learning. Most important, it's your journey. Keep it very simple for yourself. Be easy on yourself, but always make those strives to continue learning and implementing what you learn. And with the supportive family, I mean, that's so important. Like Brother Kenneth said, that communication is key. That is what's going to help you get that support that you need, and for them to understand too, so that you maybe aren't getting a lot of questions you don't really know how to answer at the beginning when you are just learning yourself. So reach out to us, reach out on the page, reach out in the private messages. We, for those of us who've gone through it, we can understand it, maybe give tips or help through it, and find other people that have gone through it. Find that support system for yourself. It's very important. So we are going to be closing out today. I hope that was beneficial information for everyone today. Inshallah, it will help all of us take these tips. Even now, after 27 years, there's still tips I learn every year that help me make the days more beneficial, and keeping it on a positive note. All the difficulties and the struggles and whatnot that we go through during this time, this is all something that is supposed to bring us closer to Allah, closer to our Creator. So just keep that in mind when you are, feeling the pressure, and maybe not feeling all the pleasantries that you might feel like you should be feeling. It'll come, but just be patient with yourself and know that you can get through it. We've all done it, and you can get through it. And especially Brother Kenneth, mashallah, 10 years, he's perfected that with his family, and inshallah.
I wouldn't say perfected, but
a good example.
Got some equilibrium, so to speak.
Yes, of course. But it's changed from being something where maybe they were questioning what you were doing to seeing the benefit in it. So, you've tweaked it enough over the years to where it's become more of an example, right? Like you said, your mom's seeing it more in a positive light rather than a negative light. And we have to keep that in mind ourselves too, as we're going through that month. So during this month, actually, we are going to be kicking off on March 24th. This will be our third annual Quran Rush. And what we do is we are going to be going over a juz each night. There'll be a different member from Embrace that will be presenting and leading the discussion, basically, and talking about a juz. So we do go over this in English. And so if you are looking to, you're wanting to read through the Quran, but it seems daunting, come join every night on Facebook. You'll see the advertisement, the flyer there. It will have the Zoom link attached there as well for you to join us. It is not on camera. This is a private closed session. So don't worry about being on camera or whatnot. This is a learning experience for everyone. That will be starting at 6:45 p.m. Central Time, so Texas time. You can adjust that according to all the time zones out there, and we do have it on the flyer. So if you're looking for your specific time zone, you can find that on the flyer today. You'll find that on Facebook and Instagram. Anything you want to add about that, Brother Kenneth? Quran Rush?
I think you covered all of it. Basically, inshallah, every single, I think you already mentioned, every single night we'll have a different presenter from our Embrace community. So a new face every single night. So please do join us, share your thoughts, join the conversation. And inshallah ta'ala, together as a family, we'll grow closer to the Quran and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this program.
Inshallah. All right. Well, until next week, everyone, we will see you next week. And with the start of Ramadan, we will be going over more topics, inshallah, to help us through this blessed month. Until then, I pray that you all have a beautiful week, and may Allah help us to gain and benefit from all this information that we are digesting. Please make sure you share this out on your platforms. There's a lot of people out there that may benefit from this information, inshallah. So until next week, thank you, Brother Kenneth, for joining us today on our show, talking about fasting with our non-Muslim families.
Thanks for having me.
Your help was very beneficial since we didn't have that experience as much as you had. So thank you very much. We'll see you next week, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.